Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here and it's time for a haul. So I've picked up a few books over the last couple of weeks and I've been sent a few books from publishers, so let's get straight into those ones first. The first one I've been sent because I am part of the blog tour, and that is Our Chemical Heart by Crystal Sutherland. I absolutely adore the front cover of this. I love this sort of white with a brilliant blue on the front. I love the way it feels like the fish are floating on the page, and I'm really excited to be part of the blog tour for this one. So in this book we're following a boy called Henry. He's at high school and he is a bit of a film buff, and he falls for a girl who is totally not his type called Grace. Grace wears men's clothing, she walks with a cane, she smells like she hasn't washed in weeks, and Henry just can't stop thinking about her. Grace is a little bit broken and Henry wants to put her back together, and I can't wait to see what this YA romance brings to the table. The next book that I've been sent by a publisher is Golden Hand by Garth Nix. This is the next book in Garth Nix's Old Kingdom series, which also contains Clariel, Sabriel, Lyriel and Aborson. I've only read the first in this series, so I am planning on doing Nix November, and I'm going to read the whole of this series, including this final one, all over November. So if you want to join me, feel free. Next up, I was sent from the publisher All This Has Nothing to Do With Me by Monica Sabalo, and I'm really excited about this one. It's a really small book, but it's very interestingly written. There's a lot of different pictures and text types, so I'm intrigued to see what this one is about. The back says, have you ever been crazy in love? When MS falls hard for XX, a seductive Vespa driving Parisian, she finds her behaviour changing. Suddenly she's stealing his lighters on their dates, documenting his drinks choices and agonising over the meaning of words in his messages, and when inevitably XX loses interest, MS's obsession spirals. This is the story of unrequited love told through the fragments, photos, emails, letters of a broken relationship. Dark, stylish, funny, painful in its addictive glimpse into a woman's tormented mind. I'm going to stick the book over Matilda's face as she tries to get in the picture. You're sneaky. Anyway, this one sounds like a good one, and it's very short. It's only a couple of 100 pages, but I can't wait to see what I think. All the rest of the books are ones that I've picked up myself, and the top two are two that I decided to pick up after attending the Glance event at Foyles in London. I really enjoyed hearing some fantasy and science fiction authors talk, and two of the books that were talked about while we were there. The first was Fantasyland by Diana Wynne Jones. Now this was mentioned, someone else mentioned it actually, Joanne Harris talked about it and said how she loved it, and it's basically a dictionary, but it sort of draws light on different things. So for instance, I'm just going to flick through and pick a random spot. Okay, here we go. This one says nunneries. The rule is that any nunnery you approach, particularly if you're in dire need of rest, healing or provisions, will prove to have been recently sacked. You will find the place a smoking ruin littered with corpses. You will be shocked and wonder who could have done this thing. Your natural curiosity will shortly be satisfied, because there is further rule that there will be only one survivor, either a very young novice or a very old nun, who will give you a graphic account of the raping and burning and the names of the perpetrators. If old, she will then die, thus saving you from having to take her along and feed her from your dwindling provisions. If a novice, she will either die likewise or prove to be not as nunnish as you first thought, in which case you may be glad to have her along. I just think this is witty and humorous and very funny, and looking into all of those common things that occur in fantasy writing. So I can't wait to sort of dip into this and see what funny anecdotes there are. Next up, I picked up a Joanne Harris book. I love Joanne Harris. I read the Chocolat series, and I've also read a lot of her other books. But one I hadn't picked up, which is one of her lesser known, which she talked about at the event, was Rune Mark. So this is a fantasy. Joanne Harris herself said it's one of her lesser known fantasies. It's about a girl who has a rune on her hand. She's sort of magical and has these magical abilities. And I'm really excited to try try this out and see what I think. And it's blurbed by the Telegraph as she is so terrific, she can write about anywhere, anything and anyone. I have to agree, I do really enjoy her stories and her books, and I can't wait to see what her fantasy has in store. Next up, if you've been watching my videos, you'll know that recently my BookTuber Recommends from the lovely Carolyn Storer was a Sarah Manning book called You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, which I really enjoyed. And so I have now picked up some of Sarah Manning's books from the library, but I also picked up one of her books secondhand online, and that is Unsticky. So this is a story of 20-something Grace. She's sick of the sort of 20-something scene of rock stars and rock star wannabes and the dating scene, and she meets an art dealer who could be a sugar daddy, and she decides to give it a go, and she's thrust into this world of art and money and privilege, and she has to make the decision on where the line is between selling yourself for money and being a trophy girlfriend. And I think it sounds really good. What I really liked about Sarah Manning's book, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, which is my first I've read by her, is that she is a romance writer and what you would call women's fiction or whatever, you know, adult contemporary fiction, but there's definitely some real depth to the subjects that she's talking about, which I really enjoy. Next up, I haven't actually read the book that I already own by Sarah Moss, but everyone loves her books, and so I've picked up Night Waking by her as well, because I'm sure I'm going to love her writing, and so I've picked this one up in anticipation. It's a bit scuffed because it is a second-hand one, but I'm really excited to get into her work at some point soon. This one sounds just brilliant. It's about a woman. She has two young boys and she is a historian, and she's struggling to write without a room of her own. They're on this Hebridean island where her husband is searching for puffins, and then her sons find a baby's skeleton in the garden and her life changes. She investigates and obviously I'm assuming uses her sort of historical research background, and the story unravels, and I just think this sounds brilliant and I can't wait to try it. Next up is a book I'm sure I've heard of before, and I want to say I heard it on the Reading Outlaw, Chelsea from the Reading Outlaws channel, but I'm not sure, so let me know, Chelsea. And that is The Mobile Library by David Whitehouse. This is about a 12-year-old boy called Bobby, and he escapes into books in the mobile library, and he meets a young girl and her mother who is the cleaner of the mobile library, and where Bobby uses the mobile library as a means of escape, the mother and daughter need a real escape, and perhaps the mobile library can provide that for them. And then the final book I picked up was in a second-hand bookshop. I am definitely a sucker for anything set in Asia, so I just picked them up willy-nilly. And this one is The Concubine of Shanghai by Hong Ying, and it looks phenomenal. I'll read you the back. Sold by her aunt in 1907 to a reputable Shanghai brothel, 16-year-old Cassia is plucked from the rank of lowly servant to Power Chang, the fearsome boss of a triad gang. Chastised by the madam for leaving her feet and breasts unbound, Cassia nonetheless becomes his favourite mistress and develops a taste for luxurious living while enjoying their first passionate encounters. But when Power Kang is brutally murdered, Cassia must fend for herself, and determined to succeed, she seduces the next triad boss, Huang Peiyu, and his lackey Yu, fighting to secure her position as the Queen of Shanghai, whatever the costs. So I really can't wait to try this one. So that's all the books that I've picked up and very kindly been sent this month. Let me know if you've read any of these, any you recommend, any that you think look interesting, and as always, let's chat in the comments down below, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.